Good morning and a very warm welcome to you. I'm Kate Russell, tech reporter and ageing gamer, and I'm delighted to be hosting this very timely discussion today about the unsung hero of British innovation, the gaming industry. If you ask most people in the street today to describe a typical gamer, they are likely to dish up the stereotype character of a teenage lad raging at Fortnite in his bedroom. But in truth, if you look at the more than 2.5 billion gamers around the globe, the average gamer is 34 to 36 years old, owns a house and has children. And in many territories, approaching half of them are women. I have been playing computer games since the dawn of home computing, elite on the BBC Micro. I'm willing to bet a fair few of you watching can probably say the same. And I started reporting on tech back in 1995 as a games journalist. It has been fascinating to watch the sector grow and morph, and exciting to see how many of the cutting-edge technologies developed to satisfy gamers' demands for more immersive experiences have been used across industries to drive innovation and growth. Gesture control, computer vision, mixed reality, they were all made mainstream because of their value to gamers. Hollywood producers are using game engines to create big-screen entertainment, and epidemiologists are using data from World of Warcraft to make more accurate mathematical models for the spread of a real virus. Let's face it, far from being a bedroom hobby for awkward teens, gaming is an important part of the global economy and the backbone of countless innovations we use in daily life. So, the video games industry has grown up, and we shouldn't really be surprised. It is over 50 now, after all. Its denizens are also grown up, with disposable incomes as they start heading en masse into retirement in a couple of decades from now, a lot of disposable time as well. Are we ready to cater to that kind of opportunity and growth? The pandemic, too, has accelerated change across the world. People had to get down with technology if they wanted to take part in life. And as a byproduct of trying to survive, they realised how much fun a game of Among Us with your friends could be. Experts are saying we might have leapt forwards 10 years in tech innovation because of the pandemic. And I think it's clear that the future is not going to be less online than it is today. The future of the games industry is definitely online, whether it's digital marketplaces and communities, or gamers competing against each other in permanently online titles like Fortnite or Overwatch, or streamers using platforms like Twitch and YouTube to entertain huge audiences watching at home. Even coders and designers working remotely on developing a game, it all relies on a fast, stable connection to the internet. Historically, the UK has done really well in the gaming sector, right from the start, pushing the boundaries in genre-defining ways. It's become a world leader and is a vital part of the UK economy, creating highly skilled jobs across the country. But as we move into the next generation of games and gamers with new demands, new challenges and new opportunities, are we sure we know the games industry well enough to be ready? That, my friends, is the question we are going to have a stab at answering today. I'll be joined by specialist journalists, analysts, developers and gamers themselves to discuss how the UK can continue to support the growth of this exciting sector. All that coming up in Game On.
Are you ready, Player One? Since the 80s, from arcade to consoles, from PCs to mobile, gaming has made a lasting impression on culture. It now dominates the global entertainment sector and is comparable to revenue in sports and entertainment media. Last year, gaming was a near $160 billion industry. And in the next 2 years, it's projected to surpass the $200 billion mark, driven by ever-increasing demand from the 2.7 billion and growing gamers from around the world, 36 million of whom are in the UK. Not only does the UK consume video games in great numbers, it's also a hub of creativity. The UK is home to over 2,000 games companies, directly employing more than 20,000 people. In 2020 alone, the gaming sector contributed a massive £7 billion to the UK economy. That's up by 26%, as one of the only outlets where friends and communities could interact and enjoy each other's company during lockdown. Lockdown highlighted the need for next-generation connectivity. Gaming is at the forefront of the digital evolution. Gaming is mainstream. It's where creativity, community and connectivity meet. But does the UK have the infrastructure to support the creators and the communities in 5, 10 or even 20 years from now? Can the UK maintain its position in this sector? And how do we ensure players enjoy the gaming experiences that other countries will? Rich rewards are here to be unlocked, and new bonus levels are ready to be discovered.
So lots to think about there. I guess we should dive straight in. Joining me for our first panel discussion is George Gigiashvili, who is Principal Games Analyst at Omdia, covering areas including cloud gaming, subscription services, AR, VR and wearable technology. George, welcome to you. Also joining us is podcaster, presenter and all-round tech and gaming enthusiast, Shay Thompson. Hello, Shay.
Hello.
Welcome, both of you. Thank you so much for being with us. Perhaps we could start by talking about how the sector has changed and shifted in the 18 months during the pandemic. Shay, let's start with you. Who is playing games at the moment, do you think? Because there is this sort of typical idea that it's maybe still a bedroom, teenage boys in their bedroom, isn't there?
It's also grown women in their bedroom. I'm coming to you live from my bedroom. Right in front of me, I've got my Nintendo Switch, my PS4. It's this thing where, for a long time it was considered to be this kind of solitary experience that only, boys did. But like you said earlier on, it's very much split down the middle with women, men, and other marginalized genders making up like a big chunk of, who are playing these games. And it actually skews a lot older than people think. There was a story recently about a guy an older guy who he played the entire Mass Effect Legendary Edition, which is this iconic trilogy, for the first time because he was able to play it on an easier difficulty and he experienced this wonderful world. And it was a really good time for him. And, we're seeing more and more stories like that.
And Shay, as well, I remembered seeing a story from Green Man Gaming like ages ago about how they have the genres that people are buying are shifting, and actually it's not competitive games that have been going during the pandemic, but cooperative games and puzzle games. Is that your experience from what your audiences, sort of in your streaming are expecting you to play as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So you see a lot of puzzle games in particular and narrative-driven games, so stuff like The Last of Us. We talk about like Animal Crossing as well. In a time where we couldn't be physically connected with each other, it was a way for people to keep up with their friends. I know it was the same thing for me. I had so many group chats going, like talking about like turnips, which is one of the currencies in game. And and those are people who hadn't really bought consoles or played games before. It brought loads and loads of people into the fold to play loads and loads of different types of games.
George, in your experience, obviously your company does a lot of research and you sort of keep your eye across multiple different, sectors and also regions. How does gaming compare with other entertainment sectors in terms of how much it's been impacted by the pandemic?
Well, just like all industries, video games has been positively impacted, you could say. So we actually saw an average of 20% year-on-year increase in terms of money being spent on games, which is really, really impressive. And I completely agree with what you guys have discussed. Because of pandemic, more people did turn to gaming. And actually, according to our research, we saw that almost 90% of 16 to 70-year-olds actually tried gaming in the last year or 18 months, which is quite amazing. And in terms of gender split in UK, it's basically 50-50.
Yeah, this has always surprises people when I speak to them about the gender split because, I don't, I guess, look like the typical, in most people's minds, gamer. But the other thing that the typical gamer will have experienced over the last 18 months, George, is the connectivity issues. Not just for gaming, but, the whole neighbourhood is streaming all sorts of movies, Netflix, all the rest of it. How has the usage of data shifted during this pandemic time, and how's that impacted the gaming industry?
Yes, so the network companies really had to work a lot to keep up with this increased demand. So, for example, at the beginning of the pandemic in Italy, I remember there was a case where Fortnite dropped a large free update, and Telecom Italia actually said that they saw a massive spike in usage and they had to actually deal with that spike. And that was all due to this massive update. And as the games are getting better and better as the fidelity gets better. The game sizes and downloads are getting larger as well. So telcos have to invest in their networks and into things like machine learning and AI to spot these kind of spikes and deal with them proactively.
Georgia, I've been arguing with my service provider, like gamers across the world, I'm sure, during the pandemic, about the sort of like the way that the connection will suddenly just choke. And, you know, they're saying weight of traffic because of the pandemic, you know, it's extraordinary times. We're not going to refit our infrastructure. But do you think that that's, you know, sort of, do you think it is going to lighten off once the pandemic lockdowns all end? Are we going to continue with this sort of issues around data?
I don't think that issue is going to go away anytime soon. If anything, more and more people will turn to gaming in the future as well, just as they have during the pandemic. So I don't think that's a good excuse. I think the reality is that the network operators have to continue investing into their network and improving it, because, as I said, the gaming is becoming more immersive, requires a lot more data, and we have things like cloud gaming on a horizon as well, with services like Stadia and Game Pass, and subscription services as well, which is all reliant on game downloads. So if anything, we're going to see a lot more downloads.
Yeah, absolutely. Shay, I mean, in your work, you must rely more and more on connectivity, and not only for playing games, but also for allowing your audience to connect with you. What kind of experiences are people enjoying with gaming now? And, you know, do you think that we're moving away from a sort of a world where you can play games offline? It's going to be all online?
I think like it was destined for, you know, fully online gaming to be the thing, like things like Stadia and, you know, xCloud. That was supposed to be the future. But, you know, as we've sort of said, like the infrastructure just isn't there yet. So I think, you know, I think you'll have a sort of hybrid, what I'd like to call a hybrid of the two. So you'll have people playing, you know, single player games, but playing it in a way that is kind of, you know, reminiscent of co-op, or like kind of couch co-op, where you kind of pass the controller back and forth. You can do stuff like that on the PS4 and the PS5, sort of sharing the controller. You know, I've done streams like that where, you know, I'll let people help me make choices in narrative games that let you do that. So I think, you know, we'll see a bit of a hybrid for the time being in terms of like content that's put out, but I don't think fully online gaming, I don't think we're there just yet.
This is really depressing for me, George, because when you look at other countries around the world, I mean, I've been lucky enough to travel to Japan with BBC Click, and you sort of compare the situation that they have, you know, they're sort of running around sort of, you know, doing AAA games on their mobile phones, for goodness sake, while they're waiting for the bus. Do you think, George, that you know, how fast do we need to start running if we want to keep up with the world in terms of connectivity and infrastructure?
Well, I think overall UK is doing quite well, at least when it comes to gaming. So UK is in the top 5 markets for gaming in terms of the spend on games. So that's China, US, Japan, South Korea, and then UK. But I actually wanted to show you just one slide, actually, in terms of the spend that we're expected to see and how that's going to grow over the next few years. So on the left-hand side, just kind of that peak that you're seeing in 2021, that's spent on game consoles in UK. So that's a new record in 2021, thanks to the new generation of Xbox and PlayStation consoles reaching $1.6 billion in 2021. That will obviously peter off over the next few years as the price of hardware goes down. However, the spend on content will go up, as you can see on the right-hand side. And as you can see, there is a growing trend over the next 5 years. So the total market for games will grow from 6 billion to 7.3 billion, supported by new technologies such as cloud gaming.
We saw this, didn't we, with office computing, where it used to be terminals. You needed a terminal that, was good enough to run the software you needed it to run, and they needed to be everywhere. And as we began to put everything cloud side, you almost can reduce yourself to a dumb terminal. You just need that fast connection and the ability to sort of port that data backwards and forwards successfully to your machine. Shay, do you think that the technology that you have available to you at the moment is going to be sufficient to continue sort of like really enjoying the games? And do you find that your viewers as well are finding that they're sort of like being left behind a little bit with tech?
I think there have been kind of circumstances that have attributed to that. So, it's really hard to get like powerful graphics cards, for example, just because of, manufacturing issues with the pandemic and stuff. So, there's a big bottleneck with trying to get stuff like that. And then even with consoles, like, I'm one of the lucky few. I have a PS5, but, not a lot of people do. And, when I go back and forth, like when I play stuff on my PS4, my good old faithful, there is like a noticeable degradation. It's not something that people necessarily like point out, but sometimes it is really egregious. You had games like Cyberpunk that were just completely broken, like unplayable on old generation consoles, so your Xbox Ones, your PS4s. So, and that was a huge deal. So I think there are like special circumstances where people will, absolutely not entertain that at all. But I think it's more, people are more forgiving nowadays just because of the kind of manufacturing issues at play.
Yes, but I guess manufacturers are only going to be able to use that as an excuse for a limited amount of time now as we head out of the pandemic. Okay, Georgia, who do you think is, in looking at the gaming world and, sort of how we're going to progress in the future, not where we're at now, but where we may be in 10 years, 20 years from now, which country is poised to really be leading the pack?
Mm-hmm. Well, as I mentioned, those countries that are already ahead of UK, particularly Japan, South Korea, of course, and China, they are so advanced in terms of technology and smartphone adoption, and things like 5G rollouts as well, I think is important. I always say kind of South Korea is a great market to have a look at, like a crystal ball in terms of kind of show you what is to come in other markets. So if you look at South Korea and how quickly they managed to roll out 5G and their ability to deliver things like cloud gaming to millions of people in the country, that kind of gives you an indication of what is to come and what countries like UK should be striving for.
What do you think we can learn from countries like that to help boost our own ability to meet demand and grow with the market here in the UK?
Well, there are many different challenges to overcome, as I mentioned, be that making sure that the things like fiber rollouts and 5G rollouts are done at a good pace and has a good coverage in the whole country. So that's of course one of them. And other one is things like supporting the local gaming scene. So local gaming development companies and publishers and so on. I think this is something that these countries have done really well. And UK is doing that, doing well in that regard. But I think, as always, they could be doing more.
Yeah, we've definitely got the talent and we've got the history as well. Exactly. Shay, if there was one thing that you would like the powers that be to do to help us push forwards, what would be the one thing that you would like the omnipotent god of gaming to do?
Just to kind of get on my soapbox for a very short amount of time, video games as a medium are interesting because it's the intersection where technology and art, sit. Countries like Japan and South Korea have folded gaming into their mainstream culture. If the UK took games seriously, like both technically and culturally, we could see that same push. And then, we'll see it come from the top down, from the government, from just people's like perception of games. That would lead to, more gaming content on like mainstream outlets. And I think that then puts gaming in people's minds. And then it's like, yeah, we should do more stuff with this. So hopefully that's the tide that we'll be seeing in the next year or so.
It frustrates me as well.
I would just echo those comments, and particularly with South Korea. The interesting thing that happened in South Korea in early 2000s is that because there was widespread piracy of games, they essentially invented the whole free-to-play genre to counter that. And of course, it really doubled down on esports as well. So I think as a whole country, as Shay has just mentioned. So I think these are kind of the lessons that can be learned.
Yeah, I agree. It's so frustrating to me. I think as somebody in the media, I have responsibility as well, because you see so many parents afraid to let their girls game and stuff like that. So we need to take it more seriously. Shay, George, thank you so much for joining us. It's been brilliant speaking to you.
Thanks, Kate. It's a pleasure.
Okay, time to hear from an industry insider now. Texas-based developer Farbridge Games was created in 2017 by a team of executives from top video game and media companies. Since then, they've developed cutting-edge experiences for Steam VR and Nintendo Switch, Sony PlayStation and Microsoft Xbox. Earlier, I spoke to their executive producer, Donald Harris, to give us a developer's eye view on the lay of the land, and began by asking him how gaming is changing as we move into a more hyper-connected world.
What you'll find is like a lot of the games that are coming out are almost always have a multiplayer component. It's where, it's where the trends are going, getting people even more connected and delivering bigger and better experiences. And so, internally we call it games as a service. That's one of the particular models that we build games on. And so when you think about it, you think about buying a game once, you take it home, you play it, those days are gone, right? You buy the game once, but you're going to be playing this game for years at a time. And we're going to be adding in things to make you want to connect with your friends or people down the street or just random strangers to play and enjoy these games with. So as time has progressed, the trends have definitely gone to just, we want to bring more people together in games.
One of the problems with the sort of like the rise of the online multiplayer game is that all internets are not created equal, right? I mean, I've played, competitive first-person shooter games with people, and if you've got a bad internet connection, then you're not going to win. But also, you're perhaps not going to be as drawn to the kinds of game that require a hefty internet connection. Do you think that is impacting the way that we think about development and the way we think about being gamers?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's funny that you bring this question up, because currently working on some multiplayer games back at the office, during our development phase, we pick and choose literally which data that we want to send across the wire, right? If it's something that we can avoid sending across the wire to make that transmission faster, and therefore leveling that field, we put a lot of thought into that. So whereas someone may be on a slower internet connection, that would make us, like, what we try and do is we try and plan out, man, we don't need to send every bit of data that we got, to their computer, and then have them send it back to us and then back to the server, so forth and so on. So yeah, it's very impactful on the way we design our games, features that we want to put into the games that we know, hey, if we have a certain feature, we're going to eliminate like a large part of our player base, and so we don't want to do that. So yeah, it's heavy on the mind, especially when you also talk about different platforms, right? So you've got mobile, PC, and your consoles. So even those dictate what kind of features we can put into a game as far as network and multiplayer.
So what do you think, when it comes to sort of user experience, the bandwidth and the connectivity that you're giving people, it can have a serious impact on their experience. Do you see a point at which it will be absolutely imperative that you have to have an internet connection or you can't be a gamer. Is that coming at all?
Oh, man, that is a big question. Um, in some ways, I do see that. I think so, for instance, if you look at all the current platforms that are out there, again, going back to PC, mobile, and console, all of those have digital libraries where you don't even buy physical games. You need an internet connection to get the game. So saying that there is coming a point to where you're going to need an internet connection or you're not going to be able to play games, it could be likely. It's just easier for game developers like myself to make games and deliver them over the wire. I don't have to deal with physical publishing. I don't have to deal with inventory. Yeah, that day could come. Now that you're making me think about it, that day very well could come.
And there's whole swathes of the population of many countries will be happy by that, but also many who will be very not happy. But when it comes to game development, let's think a little bit about you as a sort of a development studio. Do Farbridge choose their talent? Do you have talent working outside of your office? And in which case, what are the internet connectivity issues that you have to deal with? And is that a factor in choosing somebody to work with you?
Yes. Well, we're all going through the pandemic, and currently our office, we don't have an office. We're all remote workers. And that very, very much was an important piece of how we were going to set up our now virtual offices, right? So most of our team members are within the side of Austin, Texas. We do have a few folks that are spread out around the U.S., and then we had one person that was actually located in Hawaii. And barring time zone issues, there were some situations to where we had to accommodate slower internet, right? Because he and actually not only was he in Hawaii, but he also lived on a farm. So it's like, when you're adding up different difficulties on internet connectivity and being in a rural area and on an island, there were times where, he, during his overnight time, he would be downloading large packets of data from us so that he can work on different parts of the game, and so, but it's tough. It's challenging. We can have talent that is located in a part of the world where there's not significant internet bandwidth, and we can't work with them. It would be impossible. It would be impossible. It was difficult with the person in Hawaii. So, yeah.
Do you think that politicians and even actually parents take gaming seriously not enough as an industry, with viable careers, great at generating tax and income, and do you think that we're taking it seriously not enough as a society to really give the rocket boosters that it needs for us to keep generating great games?
So taking myself out of that equation, absolutely not enough, right? Obviously, in my household, I take it very seriously. I know that if my kids want to stream or if they want to develop games, I know that they can make a sustainable lifestyle for themselves. I think politicians and parents in general still think of games as being fun and just a hobby, which they are, and that's great, and that's one of the reasons why I like making games. But with the rise of esports and things like that, and the money around those industries, I don't think politicians and parents are really taking a strong look at it and saying, hey, my child can make large amounts of money, more money than me, playing games. And that's exactly where we are. And ESL is a great example of that. Like that organization there, the amount of money that they make, the amount of money that the players make, it's a lifestyle. It's a very lucrative lifestyle for sure. And I don't think people are taking it serious enough.
I just want to round off the talk though, get a bit more back to sort of like the future gazing about how we can look at fixing the digital divide, how we can bring more people into the industry, and how we can perhaps get a wider variety of people more accepting of the idea of gaming as a serious career option and a serious business. So what more can we do to help the world reap the societal benefits of gaming?
I think with respect to game makers, people who are building the games and developing the games, I think there's lots of opportunity there that we can use our platforms to help improve society, right? I think number one, teaching and building games that teach good habits and outreach into the community. I think going into our communities as game developers, so like a lot of the times when I'm not speaking on technical things like we are today, I go and speak about diversity and inclusion, and I go into different communities and I try and spread the word of gaming and game development and show off the opportunities. I think we all have some responsibility of doing that, right? And so one of the things I used to say way back in the day was that if you want different video games to play, you have to get different people to make them. And so going out into the community, getting different people, that's the way that cycle works.
Donald, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Farbridge executive producer Donald Harris there talking to me earlier. What a lovely man he was. And if you would like to hear more from Donald about his work, getting more diversity into gaming, as well as his views on the future of the sector, then the full version of that interview will be available in a standalone episode of the Tech Podcast by Huawei in the coming days. Details of how you can subscribe will be coming at the end of the programme. But now, thousands of you are watching online, as if to prove our point that the online and the community around gaming is so important. So shout out to you, stick the hashtag in whatever your platform of choice is, and let's get the conversation going online as well. And we've heard a little this morning about the needs of you gamers, but it is time now to hear the truth direct from the horse's mouth. We went to central London to visit Beyond's gaming arena in Oxford Street, where we asked the gamers to tell us about what drives their passion.
Since growing up, it's a way me and my dad connected, from Tekken to racing games and all sorts.
Competing in FIFA esports, it's very good to have that hub of people, especially with being locked indoors for most people.
It means friendship, really. You have, your Discord channels, you have like the people you speak to every day. I know people from like Denmark to Belgium to all sorts, like from Europe and stuff, and it's a very comforting thing because no matter like what happens kind of thing, you always have that to fall back on.
It's quite good. You meet quite good people in there. Fun, nice.
A funny post on Twitter or post some art like I do on Instagram and stuff, and see how much support and love people have for content that's created outside of the game, not just in the game.
More people are getting involved with said communities, making it more enjoyable for everyone.
I was using the house Wi-Fi and it would just disconnect me every 3 minutes. I hated it and I couldn't go anywhere because I couldn't bring my laptop and the Wi-Fi, and it was just horrible.
You can play the game better, but when you lag and it kicks you out of the game, then it's not that great.
It's the difference between those little moments that could win or lose you a potential game, and especially when you're really trying hard to like improve your rating, every moment matters.
The most important thing, like obviously next to the actual game, is the connection is the most important thing, because like even at home sometimes the connection will just be like, it will be good for a bit and then boom, it goes down for a bit and it's like, well, what's going on? So it's just nice to have a kind of smooth, relaxing gameplay.
Wasn't that lovely? And don't forget, you can add your own thoughts to that question. What's your passion about gaming? Just use the hashtag GameOn and let everybody know. Well, for our final discussion this morning, we're going to be focusing on the fast emerging esports sector. the world of professional gaming is an increasingly important part of the industry, with competitors from around the world facing off in landmark events for big cash prizes. Before the pandemic, many of these events could, of course, happen on location, but the changes of the last 18 months have seen the sector shift its focus. To discuss these issues, I'm delighted to be joined by Oliver Maxfield, who is a Pro Tour mobile and game manager at ESL Gaming, Ella Romanos, who is COO of Fundamentally Games, and with me is Tamer Malik, who is an arena manager with our hosts here at Belong, who of course are very keen to see the return of gamer football. Well, to start off with, I'd like to sort of talk about how the pandemic has altered the landscape of competitive esports. Oliver, lay it on us. Just how big are the e-gaming and esports industries now?
Hey, you guys. Yeah, thanks for having me on the panel. I mean, it's hard to overestimate how big esports and gaming is right now. Just to kind of frame the opportunity a little bit, I've brought a couple of slides, and I think for me these numbers really blew me away when I first saw them. So I think there's two important factors, right? One is the opportunity. And I think the second part is how that opportunity actually translates into mobile gaming and esports, right? So there are approximately 4.2 billion smartphone users right now in the world, and as a subset of that, a derivative of that, 2.7 billion are playing games on one or more device. So I think that is the opportunity, right, to reach 2.7 billion people who are playing games, and also on top of that potentially grow out and reach the remaining to make up the 4.2. And I think the second part, the crucial part, is actually how that translates into the real world of esports, right? So I just wanted to give you an idea of where mobile gaming and esports has come in the last, let's say, 12 months or so. So in July of 2020, 4 out of the 5 top tournaments in terms of viewership were all mobile titles, right? Mobile Legends, PUBG Mobile, Arena of Valor, and Free Fire, of course. And even just this past May, the Free Fire Singapore Championship saw over 5.4 million peak concurrent viewers. So I think that really highlights both the opportunity in terms of mobile gaming, but also the size and the viewership that we're seeing now. Mobile gaming and mobile esports isn't something that is on the sidelines. It's actually the main event now, which is super happy to see.
Oliver, do you think the sort of the world, both the financial world and people who might be sponsors or supporters, but also parents whose kids might be interested in going into professional gaming, do you think the world takes gaming as a sport seriously enough yet? Is that beginning to shift?
I think the simple answer to that question is yes. I think I will caveat that by saying I don't think it matters what people think it will be. It's ultimately it's here to stay. It's growing exponentially, and it's giving millions of people the opportunity, as we say in ESL, and it's one of our pillars, to go from zero to hero. So to go from couch to stage to play for hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I think yes, people are warming to it. But I don't think that really matters at the end of the day. It's here and it's only going to grow.
We're going to do it with or without your help, right?
Exactly.
Tamer, I mean, here at Belong, obviously, you guys must have been impacted a lot by the pandemic, for obvious reasons. But what do arenas like this bring to the public that they perhaps can't get at home?
So I think, obviously, lockdown's shown us how much gaming can really bring us together, and it gave us an opportunity to do those kind of teamwork and activities. I think one of the great things about Belong, though, is we've set up an infrastructure for grassroots esports. So people that are looking to be part of a team, whether they think, we get people walking in all the time thinking they're not good enough to be part of a team, and we show them that actually you might potentially, you are, and you can come down and play. But I also think that although gaming online is great, with gaming other people, I think coming in and playing as part of a team that you do see in person, whether you're playing against other people that you can't see, is such a unique experience. And being able to, when you get a win, or whether it's a loss, being able to celebrate or work on things and talk to each other, face to face is something that we do offer here, and we have arenas all through up and down the UK that provide that competitive esports experience where you can play for Sutton like we are here against another London team, or even a team up in Scotland, for example.
And when you talk about the experience, is there a comparison that can be made with football, with real football, like Premier League? If ESL's the Premier League, what are the people who play here?
I really do. I think we have a lot of games that have come out. I think Fortnite's a good example of something that's so accessible and so easy to watch by a lot of people. I do really believe that there is something coming that will be on that level. A game that is so accessible that I think even people that wouldn't consider themselves gamers would be interested in watching. I do think we have a few of those games already, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see something in the next couple of years that is so popular and accessible that kind of everyone would be watching it the same way you watch the Euros on the weekend. Would be a similar kind of environment that we'd watch something like that.
You had to mention the Euro.
Sorry to bring up.
Oh dear.
No, it's a touchy subject.
Ella, how about you? What are your thoughts, on what you've heard already from the two chaps?
Yeah, I mean, from the sort of game developer side of things, games are now bigger than films and music combined. Obviously, games has been growing year on year, but particularly during the pandemic. I think from the development point of view, making games designed for esports is a different way of looking at games. But in particular, watching games has become a key part of this. So obviously we're making games that people want to play competitively and professionally, but also we're making games that are good to watch as well as play. And that creates different challenges and opportunities, but has really caused a dramatic shift in the way that we think about the games that we create.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think about the games that I like watching people play, and it's the games that give you ways to view the game action beyond just sort of looking through a traditional screen. What do you think are the sort of like the key things that you think about as a developer when you start looking at developing a game? Is it audience? Is it players? Or is it something else entirely?
Yeah, I mean, it's audience, but as I said, it's not now just the people who are going to play, it's the people who are going to watch, and also how they're going to play in the environment. So we look a lot at what we call mode of use. So that's everything from the device where you're going to be when playing, also to lifestyle fit. So are you going to be playing this on a bus on the way to work? Well, probably not anymore, but or are you going to be playing this in an arena watched by thousands of people? So the environment and the context in which your audience is going to play is as important as the audience themselves.
Absolutely. Tama, here at Belong, you've obviously made adjustments through the pandemic. We can see that there are people who are able to come here and game. What does Belong offer to ease the frustrations of home gaming?
Yeah, I think we were completely blown away since reopening how many people were eager to get back in. I think if you look at the UK in general, I think even domestic and at home still don't have access to super fast, reliable internet, and that is something that, as long as the top-end hardware, we do offer a really, really stable connection, a really fast connection, especially for like some of the gamers behind me. When we talk about latency, your connection to other players when playing competitive gaming, what's considered good latency and bad latency could be within the milliseconds, and that's really, really important to gamers, and that is something that we do offer here. It's like really, really low latency and the technology as well in order to play competitively that they might not have at home.
And most people I don't know if anybody at home has had this experience too. You're playing a game and your connectivity can change throughout an hour session depending on who else in the house is on Wi-Fi, or who else in the street is streaming things up or down. Oliver, how can you ensure a level playing field for your gamers when it does seem like the infrastructure is so variable?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's two parts to this. I think one is the connectivity and the technology part, and I think the second part is the competitive integrity, right? And I think on the first part, what we've been doing, we've been focusing a lot on mobile gaming and esports. So the way that we see it is more of a democratization of esports, right? Now it's available to everyone. And it's really about, I think countries like the UK to kind of lead the way in terms of technology and connectivity to bring for instance, 5G and the story of low latency gaming, but also, playing games, chatting, and streaming all from one device, right? I think that's a future that we can all look forward to. So I think that's the first part, right? Giving everyone the opportunity to participate in esports, to go from couch to stage and to earn, thousands of dollars. I think that's super important. Something that really did not exist even as 2017, 2018. This is really when this phenomenon started to start. I think the second part is, right, like from a competitive integrity standpoint. We really work with our tech teams to make sure that we have the best technology to make sure that one, the tournaments are played on low latency, two, that there's no cheating or ringing going on, and three, we'll of course work with our publisher partners to ensure both those things as well. So yeah, that would be my kind of two-pronged answer to that question.
Ella, obviously, we heard from Donald earlier about how games producers are working really hard to try and figure out, the load and what data needs and needs not be sent to try and improve connectivity issues. But what do game developers need, do you think, to really break barriers and start innovating for the next generation of gamers?
Sure. I mean, like Donald said earlier, games are now mostly what we call either kind of living games or games as a service, by which we mean they're services rather than products. So they're run from the server with content, updates, player actions, often in real time being sent to and from the device and the server, as well as many games now using cloud streaming services like Xbox Game Pass and so on. So, we're relying on internet connections not only being fast, but also being stable. And it's actually really important to note that this doesn't just apply to games used in esports with huge audiences and player numbers. It applies to all types of games. So, for example, Candy Crush, that game operates from the server as well. Developers can already use the combination of device and server to create amazing experiences for audiences. That's kind of been one of the main drivers to the growth of the industry. But the current infrastructure is an issue. It inhibits the development and distribution of new groundbreaking experiences. It's also particularly frustrating for day-to-day for teams like us who work remotely. That presents challenges for us on a daily basis, and it really risks undermining where UK developers have to date been world leading.
Do you think the people who can sort of like change infrastructure, wherever you feel like the responsibility lies, do you think that there is enough being done? Do you think they're working enough with games companies? Do you speak with them?
No, I don't, and I personally feel that there should be more done. I think that games being as big as it is, perhaps there needs to be more done to look at how we can facilitate industries such as this, which not only audiences love, but is also a great place for careers and for talent growth within the UK. So there's so many positive things that games bring to the country that really we should be engaging more. And I think more of a focus needs to be put on how industries such as ours can be supported.
And of course, feeding the pipeline with great talent by taking it more seriously at the educational stage as well. Okay, I'm going to ask all of you now. This is sort of, future gazing, but where do you see the future of gaming going? And I'm going to start, Tamer, with you, if I may.
As I said earlier, I do really think it will be something that everyone does get involved in. I don't think it will be just exclusive to whatever the current stereotype is. I think there will be games that will come out that will invite everyone along. I do see a world in which where we're all playing from home, but also people meeting up, playing as teams, as Oliver quite rightly touched on, that sort of couch to stage gaming, where it's really about encouraging people that you can be a part of a team no matter what level you're at, because I do think that kind of competitive gaming experience that you get is really, really unique.
And it's real. I mean, it really does bring people together in ways that if you're not a gamer, you wouldn't necessarily expect, I think. Ella, what do you think? Where is the future of the gaming industry lying?
So, for me, games often leads in innovation within technology because, as an industry, we use technology, art, psychology, narrative to create unique experiences. But it's not just about, experiences that people can play together, it also, provides new ways and can create new ways to learn and to communicate and grow talent in the UK in general. So I think, from my point of view, I'm really excited to see what innovation the games industry can bring, not just to games, but also to social experiences. And we've seen that the positive effect that games has had on people's well-being during the pandemic, and particularly how it provided a way to socialise when other means were obviously not available. That all obviously existed before the pandemic, but we've seen how it has become more mainstream, and I really hope that we can have the tools, infrastructure and support to kind of further reduce barriers to entry and make games as accessible as possible to everybody to play and to watch.
I couldn't agree more. Oliver, how about you? Future of gaming, what would you like to see sort of gaming evolve into in the future?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. I think as an industry, we sometimes tend to focus on the cherries, and I think we should be more celebrating and focusing on baking the cake first. We need the cake, and then we can add the cherries on top. So just to echo the sentiments of the other panelists, right? We need better technology, we need better connectivity, we need better support, we need less stigma, we need to have more opportunity, right? We need to have more tournaments, more broadcasts, better tools, more geographies, bringing gaming to everyone and esports to everyone around the world. So I would again echo, I think, the sentiments of the other panelists there.
Oliver, when we talk about sort of inclusion, diversity, sort of the community aspect of gaming, what role do you think, especially because esports is, potentially such a high-profile way of gaming? And I know that the audiences are still quite niche, but it's growing, as the sport grows in size. What are esports leagues and companies like yourself doing to really help promote diversity and inclusion and get more people from different walks of life and different age groups involved in gaming?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a super important topic for us. We have, internal work groups on diversity and inclusion. And I think what sometimes we should all focus on is the success stories in gaming and esports around diversity and inclusion. There are people of all race, creeds, and genders that are competing in esports, and we just need to do a better job of storytelling. We need to focus on those people, build content around them, show them on broadcasts, celebrate them, and I think through that. It will be, a natural progression where, we'll have more and more people participating across all of our tournaments.
So anyone, Oliver, who's watching who thinks that they might sort of try their hand at esports, what would be their route to finding out if they're right for it?
I think everyone's right for it. I mean, in 3 months, you can go from just through ESL Mobile Open, which is our grassroots level tournament. You can go from just playing with a few friends as a bit of fun to going on to playing an ESL Mobile Challenge, which is a product we released this year, which is taking your gameplay to the next level and competing for thousands of dollars. And then looking into the next year, we're also looking to potentially add on top of that in ESL Mobile Masters, which is a little teaser, going to be a mobile mega event, right? So this is a clear progression, right? You can go from an open tournament that is really open to anyone through to a mid-tier tournament into challenge, and then into masters, into mega event, and you can be, the stars on the stage you see at IEM Katowice and ESL One Cologne.
Brilliant. And Tamara, I'm guessing if people haven't got the right connection at home to be able to do that, they can just pop down to their local arena.
It's meant to be a warm, safe environment as well for them to come down and do that in maybe where at home maybe a lot of people experience difficulties in which that might hinder their experience, whether it's like, maybe parents or siblings that bother them 24/7. If you get interrupted in a game, especially something that at a competitive level can be really frustrating. So. Yeah.
And are you seeing this sort of diversity of people coming in and joining in these sessions? Is it beginning to change?
Yeah, we see all walks of life. One of my favourite customers is an old gentleman. He comes in, he plays like a Star Wars online game constantly, but we have all walks of life that come in and all different types of games, and we try and facilitate that as best as we can.
Yeah, I strongly believe that it's actually going to be the retirement home activity of the generation, not too long from now. Final thought then, really quickly. I'm going to give you a 30-second thought. Ella, final thought from you. What's the most important thing if you want people watching this to take away from the conversation?
I think that gaming is a really positive activity, particularly on the social side. And I think that, you know, exploring, if you haven't already, exploring games and finding out, you know, what they can bring to your life in terms of social, but also, you know, in terms of learning and communication. And ultimately, you know, we want games to be as accessible as possible to everybody.
And if you're in charge of the infrastructure, get with the program, basically.
Exactly.
Oliver, how about you? Final thought?
Yeah, I think just get involved, right? This is an opportunity for everyone. I think everyone on this panel is an example of someone who's you know, gone from playing in their bedroom, competing, or just with friends, and moving on to having a career in the games industry. So I think there's plenty of opportunities out there. And it's our responsibility as the gaming industry to you know, display those opportunities and to increase those opportunities. But they are available for those that are you know, looking for them.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And of course, final word in the studio, Tama, very quickly. Final thoughts?
Yeah, I would love to just stress, similar echoing that sentiment, that I wish, for example, when I was younger, that it was made more apparent that these kind of careers were available. We're not just talking about games development or you know, infrastructure working or networking. I think there are so many jobs relating to gaming. You know, even to the guys that are, you know, here filming today is something that isn't necessarily gaming specific, but it's in that world. And I really do want to say that no matter what your interests are, there is a place for you in the industry.
Brilliant. What a lovely thought to end on. And of course, if you've got any thoughts that you want to add to the mix, use the hashtag. Your final thoughts, please, on social media. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. That brings us to the end of a fascinating morning of contributions from across the games industry. Before you go, I would like you to know that highlights from this morning's discussions will be available in the coming days on the Tech Podcast presented by Huawei. The first 3 episodes are already available and explore the economic recovery post-pandemic and the home versus office debate for the future of working. Details of how you can subscribe are coming very shortly. For now, though, I would like to thank you all for watching and for joining us this morning, and our superb contributors for their thoughts. It's clear that this sector is a substantial success story for the UK, and the opportunities are there for the games industry to continue to thrive. The brains, the passion and the know-how are already present in the UK, so the future will likely be determined by external factors. So, I ask my question again, are we ready for that kind of opportunity and growth? Do we understand the games industry as it grows old from within? And are we ready to support it with the talent, training and, crucially, the infrastructure it needs to keep winning? I hope so, because as a gamer, I kind of like winning. Thank you everyone for joining us. Goodbye.